On Friday morning, monitoring agencies working on the Korean Peninsula detected the seismic waves of about a 5.3 magnitude tremor, and it didn't take long before they realized that this was not a natural occurrence. This was the result of yet another nuclear test being conducted by the North Korean government. And in fact, it was the most powerful of the 5 tests that they've done so far in the past decade. They said that the test had a yield equivalent to 10 kilotons of TNT, which would make it, as I said, the most powerful of the past 5. This came just 3 days, or just days after North Korea test-fired 3 ballistic missiles that ended up landing in the ocean about 150 miles away from Japan. People not happy about that, of course, especially people in Japan, it turns out. North Korea also then went on to confirm the test, saying our nuclear scientists staged a nuclear explosion test on a newly developed nuclear warhead at the country's northern nuclear test site. And in response, the condemnation has been broad across the world. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe called Friday's test a significant threat to the safety of our country. And former U.S. Ambassador Christopher Hill, U.S. Ambassador to South Korea, said, before long, I think they're going to have a nuclear warhead on a missile, and we have to look really carefully and see what we're going to do. Now, before we get into our commentary, I do want to provide a little bit of historical nuclear context on what this test actually represents. So if we can bring up this graphic, this is a rough approximation based on data that we have available of basically the diameter of destruction that you can expect from nuclear weapons of different sizes. Now, in that innermost pinkish area, that is actually about twice as powerful as the nuclear weapon that North Korea tested earlier today, which is believed to have a fireball of about 5 New York City blocks or so. And then the Fat Man, which means it's about the size of the Hiroshima nuclear weapon. You have Nagasaki sized and pink, and then eventually going up to Castle Bravo and Sarbamba. Those are some of the bigger nuclear weapons that have been tested that are obviously far, far, far more powerful. Russia is believed that if it was actually to weaponize one of their biggest tests, they could reach over 100 megatons, which is far, far greater than anything North Korea is capable of. These are still obviously devastating weapons. If you unleash it in a city, whether in South Korea, China, Japan, or the US, it would be devastating. But this is not the same as them having the level of nuclear capability or ballistic missiles technology that we have or many other countries around the world have.
Thanks, John. I'm not worried anymore. I appreciate that.
Honestly, if
only
it
5 New York City blocks.
Next
if it
topic.
lands at your feet, shield.
I live in New York. It's busy. We can figure it
But
out.
like, also, like, let's be clear,
And they'll
though.
hit
Which,
Seattle.
Right.
like, which 5 blocks?
If it's in Midtown, we can negotiate.
Many
that.
Republicans,
sure.
if it was at the UN building, might be okay with it.
Times Square lately? Ugh, please.
Please.
Yeah.
I actually find it
Have
to be
at
lovely.
it. They have to wonder, like, what can we do to get attention here? With all the attention on ISIS, how many do we need to detonate?
Yeah.
Well, so that's one of the things I want to talk about here. I have something old and something new in this story. The old is it's amazing what hypocrites we are. We keep talking about, oh my God, we're in danger, we got to go get ISIS, we got to go get this guy and that guy, and etc. But North Korea is sitting there, probably the greatest threat to us. That was wonderfully awkward.
Bless you.
Okay. Probably the greatest threat to us in terms of the weapons here, which is going to lead to my new point in a second. ISIS doesn't have anywhere near a nuclear weapon. They barely have long swords. So yes, they've done a lot of damage in Iraq and Syria. And yes, they make videos on the web telling people, I guess attack wherever you are with whatever you have. But they don't have any kind of weaponry like North Korea does. Oh my God, we have to invade Iran! They might get nuclear weapons later, and they might figure out how to deliver them, but they're nowhere near any of that. North Korea already has all this stuff. Nah, who cares? Why? They don't have oil. They're not anywhere near the Middle East, so we don't give a damn. If you're not near the Middle East and you don't have oil, Russia, you want to take Ukraine? Nah.
They also have deterrence, though,
Take
right?
Crimea, North Korea, do whatever the hell you want. So you're right. North Korea is a very complicated situation and nearly impossible to resolve. Because you attack North Korea, they're going to launch all their conventional weapons and kill hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of South Koreans, probably also Japanese, let alone who else they can reach.
Well, actually, really quickly, can we bring up this final graphic? It's going to show you approximate ranges of some of their weapons. The green is what we know they are capable of using right now. That's obviously hitting South Korea. It's getting into possibly Japan in some areas. But they are testing for the red circle, which would give them all of Japan, the rest of Korea, and the ability to hit some other countries in the region. And they would like to eventually be able to hit the west coast of U.S. as well, in addition to China, India, some of the Middle East, and all of that.
So that brings me to my new point. In the past, I would say about North Korea, you know, your dad's old line. They can't make the toilets run, right? So they're not going to hit anybody. They're going to hit themselves in the face. And if they try to launch a missile, it's going to fail on the launch pad, and they're going to detonate, you know, and probably kill a lot of their own citizens. But today, I actually have a different view because of some of what the experts are saying. They're saying, yeah, in the past, when you and I were saying that, we said that a million times on the show throughout the 14 years that we've been on, they couldn't. We were right. They couldn't hit anything. Now, the amount of weaponry they could put on a missile is much, much greater. Still not completely confirmed that it was on a missile in this case, but we do know the size of the explosion, and their capabilities have clearly increased. And then I thought about it. Yeah, they're terrible with technology. The flip side is, we're saying they might have gotten to the point where they have a weapon the size that we hit Hiroshima with 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Like in 70 years, could they finally get to that point? Yeah, probably, and that's probably pretty close to where we are today. And if they can somehow deliver those nuclear weapons, certainly into South Korea, that's pretty easy. Japan, fairly easy. Now we're beginning to have a conversation about Seattle and LA.
Now I'm worried again.
Yeah.
See, he calmed me down.
Yeah.
You have me worried.
Yeah. So if we care about what a real threat is, we would be panicked over North Korea. But instead, we're like, ISIS made a video.
But don't you guys think, I mean, it is obviously a threat, but don't you think when you said internal that most of this stuff, insofar as we could tell anything about North Korea, it is internally focused, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this guy has been in power, I think now for 4 years. He's the son. He's cracked down even more ruthlessly than his dad. And this is all about sort of like deterrence from the outside and then domestic positioning on the inside. Like even as dangerous as it is, there's no actual evidence that they're just going to be like, all right, we can hit Seattle, let's do it and destroy ourselves.
No. So, look, I don't believe that anyone is an irrational completely irrational actor. So there's this theory of, some religious people, let's keep it real, they mainly talk about Muslims, like for example in Iran, they think that something or other is coming and yada yada, and so they're just going to kill everybody, you know, those irrational Muslims.
Nah.
No, I don't, and even as irrational as the North Korean leadership is, I don't think they're going to just randomly hit Seattle. But they are also profoundly stupid. So can they stumble and bumble in their way into some sort of nuclear conflict? Yes, they might want to test a weapon that gets close to Japan. Oh shit, it didn't get close, it hit Japan.
Yeah.
Now what are we going to do? Now we got to hit back, and
Right.
all of a sudden they're launching everything they got, and we're in an absolute disaster.
Well, they can reliably hit the ocean now. They've done that almost every time. But also, look at how many times they have blackmailed us with the threat of developing nuclear weapons to give them all sorts of aid and things like that. The threat to use a nuclear weapon should be even more persuasive in terms of backing up a threat and the ability of the U.S., or if they do it internationally, to get China to do what they want, to get Japan to do what they want, or South Korea.
China
Whether they
does
ever
do what
launch...
they want.
Exactly,
I mean,
but I'm
China's
saying they never need
increased
to
trade
launch a
this
weapon
year,
to get something from it.
Think about these two idiots in charge, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. Okay, imagine somebody sends the wrong tweet. Next thing you know, there's like 1 million dead people in Seoul, South Korea.
Well, and actually,
you see what I'm saying? This is some really, really serious stuff.
And to your point, Donald Trump has said, first of all, that more countries need to develop nuclear weapons, our allies especially. We can't be paying to defend you anymore. Japan should develop nuclear weapons, and South Korea should develop nuclear weapons, and they should all be armed. All the nuclear weapons should be all over the place. And then he's also laid out the case that this idea that the use of nuclear weapons should be literally the last thing any human leader ever does, that's quaint and old-fashioned. No, nuclear is great. I love nuclear, he says. And so if he's laying out that, hey, maybe we'll use it at some point and more countries should be using it, well, there goes away any of our ability through soft power to constrain the abilities of other countries to use it. If suddenly North Korea has nuclear weapons, then maybe Japan feels like they do have to actually get nuclear weapons.
Oh, they definitely.
You feel like
And that's the disaster that he represents, and that's before he's ever actually in the Oval Office.
you think Donald Trump is going to tolerate a 87-day complicated back and forth negotiation period with North Korea, right?
God help us.
We're 22 times in that because they are again looking to show and assert strength domestically, they just don't do something. Even if it's like they're 2 hours late for a meeting, right? You know, not that he would be there, but that he'll stand for that sort of pushing them around. He won't, and I'm not saying he presses a button that day, but he turns around and walks out on it, right? And pulls us out.
Or there's a
alternatively,
basic inability to negotiate or do
right.
anything like that. That's
Yeah.
obvious. But I do think the other thing to just keep in mind about this is that I don't know how stable North Korea is to begin with domestically. So the other big danger scenario is that the whole thing implodes. And you maybe even have people that are even more hardline than the present leader.
Who now
Or
that-
it just totally devolves and then you have this border crisis in China and all the rest, plus all of this material there. So that's like another thing that I'm sure, you know, Donald Trump is sort of like strategically gaming out when he thinks about various North Korean
We don't
scenarios.
know, because we have such limited access to what is happening, that this guy's not doing this and this is not a good thing. That he's not, because he's not constantly showing the generals who maybe could overthrow him, particularly radical, crazy set of generals. Oh, look at me, I got it.
Oh, I
I'm
think
testing
he is.
it.
I
Right,
think he is doing that.
Right, like he's
If I
showing
was
off to be
I
like,
think
hey, no,
so.
I'm good, I got it. But he never has any intention of anything except this, you know.
If we're lucky, if we're lucky.
yeah,
But if we're unlucky, a lot of people die. So, okay, look, let's get to solutions here, which are very, very hard in this situation. So some people like to say, well, people are so dangerous, we should do thought experiments about nuking them first. I wonder who that would be. Now, think about how stupid that is in any context. So let's just take this one. That doesn't have anything to do with religion, right? So, yeah, if anyone is unstable and dangerous, it's Kim Jong-un and the North Korean military, the most unstable people in the world. What good does it do us to nuke them? When I thought about that, I was like, oh my God, what if they nuke us? Oh no, then we'd have to, yes, you can call me a liberal. Oh no, we would have to nuke them back and then kill an innocent 1 million North Koreans, 2 million North Korean civilians who've already suffered so terribly under this Kim Jong-un regime and his dad and his grandfather, et cetera.
Fucking liberal.
I mean, why do we want to do that? Why do we want to do that? Like that? No. I don't want to nuke North Korea. And like we keep doing sanctions on them. The guy doesn't care about his own citizens. When are you going to get that through your thick head? The sanctions hardly affect him unless it affects the caviar or the particular wine that he likes that he can't get.
exotic
But that's the
car.
key. It's through China, and you also have to crack down on, because they also fund themselves literally through like drug smuggling. It's like a narco state too. So you have to hit those. And I think my impression is that China's like the only place that can actually say straight up, we will cut off some funnels for you.
So we threaten to nuke China.
We threaten to nuke China, exactly.
So
Because we
no-
don't know how to make deals with them anymore. They don't respect us. Yeah.
They're treating us like babies.
No, but I,
mean,
will
look,
tell you
it's
this.
true.
Look, Michael's exactly right. So you can't invade North Korea. They'll launch. You'll kill so many South Koreans. It's like sickening to think about. So you can't just bluster in there. You can't do nothing because they keep getting bigger and bigger weapons and the ability to deliver them until maybe they could actually hit the United States. And besides, we should be sickened at the idea of them hitting any of our allies, like South Korea and Japan. That should be enough to motivate us to take real action. So how are you going to be smart about this? Their only ally is China. So now, who does care about sanctions? China cares. So we have got to, now this is actually getting tough. You turn around to China, but you got to have allies and you got to do this smart. Again, you can't blunder into it. You got to get Europe, you got to get Russia, you got to get everybody, especially Japan and South Korea, and you got to turn around to China and say, we're done with this. So you guys have been propping these guys up forever, and we know why you're doing, because you don't want all these North Koreans coming across your border, and you don't want that refugee problem, and you kind of like that they're a thorn on the West side, and you think if North Korea becomes merged with South Korea, the West will get stronger and America will have a bigger influence. Yeah, we're past that. They got nukes. Let's go. We're past it. Yeah. So unless you do something about North Korea that's real, okay, then we're going to have a trade war. Yeah, it's going to hurt us real bad, but it's also going to hurt you real bad. So now we're very, very serious about this because the only people in the world that could actually do something about it is China. So you don't want to go in and threaten China militarily. That's crazy talk. But I think it's time to start talking about economic threats to China to make sure that North Korea doesn't get out of control.
Who's going to do that? Hillary with an earpiece from Huma Abedin telling her what to say the whole time?
Trump already has tie factories in China. He's already done business with them.
Because Trump's idea of negotiation sometimes is to just pull the rug out from people and think that, oh, I'm the only one who's crazy in this room and they will have to act rationally. Yeah. You do that with someone like Kim Jong-un and then he pulls the rug out, and oh, for God's sake.
But
Did
also,
you guys see
there,
the clips of Donald Trump talking about Kim Jong-un?
No.
It came out several. He's like,
did he
he's
hear
like,
that he complimented him or
oh,
something?
he did. He's like, I mean, it's pretty brutal, but he's a young kid. I mean, it's kind of impressive.
Yeah, he's a strong
I
player.
might not be
Oh my
saying,
God.
you know what, impressive might be a step too far. I don't remember. It's not an exact quote, but he definitely was like, that kid came in there, and I mean, look, it's pretty impressive. It's amazing.
And the problem with him and his negotiations has been that there's never any consequences for Donald Trump. He can just keep going bankrupt and starting up products, and then they go under, and new companies, and then that goes under. And then he's always going to be fine because he's great at robbing people of their money, and he started off with hundreds of millions of dollars.
That's the proposal. Don't pay North Korea for services rendered.
Exactly. Just don't pay him.
Done.
But the problem is that for the U.S., there are consequences if a deal goes sour. For instance, if we hadn't gotten the deal with Iran, then Iran would be closer to a nuclear weapon now. You can't simply go in, spit in their face, and then if they don't give you what you want, that's fine. I'll just use debt smart. You can't actually do that with the U.S. government.
But to be fair,
So here's what Trump said, and it got fact checked because Hillary. And you're right. He said you got to give him credit for the way he took control at such a young age, right? You got to. Give him, but he
That's
also
what he said about
called,
Joffrey.
He also
said it was brutal or something.
He also called him a maniac and a madman, right? But here's in January 9th speech in Iowa, Trump said you have to give Kim credit for the way he took control of the country after his father died. But Trump used Kim's rise to power as a cautionary tale for the U.S. Quote: the Republican presidential frontrunner said Kim's willingness to push aside generals and wipe out his uncle demonstrated. So, like, that's great.
She's awesome. He just wins at self-awareness.
Yeah.
But I also think, guys, that you can't compare Iran and North Korea really quickly. Iran wanted a deal, and there's a lot of very rational decision makers in Iran, whether you
I was
like
only
them
using
or
it as
not.
an example of the consequences.
But I think
of not
that's
getting a
a
deal.
lot. That's a deal that a lot of people wanted to have happen on both sides. I don't know about
Iran,
North Korea.
right? Iran. We've said so many times on the show. Iran wants a seat at the world stage, right? Right? You know, they may not behave like everybody else or how we want to do, but they want to be at that meeting, and North Korea does not. That's their thing. Is we're outsiders, and that's a huge difference.